It's only the Allianz Leagues. It's only February. Only a warm-up. Only a relegation. Only a bit of fun. It's only a debut. Only hundreds of competitive matches and thousands of players giving it their all. Only an unstoppable passion for GA across the whole nation. It's only 30 years of Allianz supporting the leagues, and we're not done yet. Only the leagues. Only the Allianz Leagues.
A grain of rice is going to tip the scale. Just remember that. There's a small bit of a needle there. Come on, Mayo. You've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen between them, and now they're really roaring.
And I can tell you, that there won't be a cow milk in County Clare for at least a week.
Hello everyone, you're very welcome to the Allianz Irish Examiner Gaelic Football Show. My name is Paul Rouse and I'm joined by the former Armagh footballer Oisín McConville, by Gary Brennan, former Clare footballer, and by Tony Leen, the sports editor of the Irish Examiner. There is only one place to start, and it's Croke Park on Saturday night. Oisín, what was it like to be in Croke Park on Saturday night to watch Armagh beat Dublin?
Well, Paul, there's a couple of things about it. The first thing was that I think it's a long time since Armagh supporters, me included, went to Croke Park. We hadn't played Dublin in a competitive game in 10 years. We travelled, to be honest, I travelled with lots and lots of hope. But I still, niggling in the back of my head, I thought, are we really at this level? And I wasn't 100% sure what level Dublin were at, but I'd seen them in the O'Byrne Cup final the previous week, and I thought, it looks as if there's some sort of shape or make coming on that Dublin team. I think when I got up there, I looked at the pitch, I looked at the two teams, I looked at the warm-up, I became more and more confident. The game started and it looked as if physically, which was the first thing in my head, physically and conditioning-wise, we were going to be right up there to what anything the Dubs had. The next thing was, could we execute when we got the opportunities? Dublin looked very open at the back. That was the first thing. There was a load of space in front of the two boys inside. Jason Duffy and Rain started the game inside, and then it looks as if Rain was playing in there on his own for long periods. But without even getting into the nuts and bolts of the game, there was something momentous about this. And I think unless you're from Armagh, it's hard to grasp just how significant a night that was, because there's a thing niggling in my head, and even when the game was over and I was leaving, and the Dubs were very complimentary, let's say, about the performance. I was wondering, was it like you tapping a little guy on the head and saying, you're great, but you're not that great, and so even though that niggle was in my head, I come home, watched the game, and I realised that all of the things you want from a serious inter-county team were there. And I don't want to think too far into the future because I wanted to enjoy the moment for what it was. And you probably think, this guy thinks they're after winning All Ireland or something. It's not like that. It's just we've had lots of false dawns, lots of times where we thought, we're back. Lots of times where we thought, we can compete with anybody. And then we get the mother and father of a good hiding, and it puts you back, way back down. But it seems to be something different this time, because I do think this is built on a lot of substance. I do think that our panel runs deeper maybe than it has done for some time. There's a second string of players there who I think are confident enough to come in and do a job. I think we unearthed a few guys even the other night, and not a lot of people would have heard of Kieran Mackin or Ben Creeley in the middle of the field. I thought both of them done well. Okay, they picked up little niggly injuries. Jason Duffy is not somebody who's brand new to us. Jason Duffy is somebody who's been on the in and around the fringes of that panel probably since he was 19, so probably 4 years, and he's starting to deliver in a big way. Aidan Nugent back from injury, Tiernan Kelly off the back of a very good club championship. We didn't even use Conor Torbett. We used Stephen Campbell sparingly. We still have a few more to come in, like Kieran O'Hanlon and boys like that, but it just felt good. It just felt really good to be there. What I was saying last night, that my wee boys they've grown up, and I've taken them to a lot of games where Dublin have been involved. They have got to know, not to know personally, but they've got to look on and appreciate what Dublin were all about. They went up the other night because they were coming up with me. They knew we were playing Dublin, and it filled them full of dread. They didn't think there was any possibility of Armagh going up there and beating Dublin. And when we did, the change of attitude of them towards Armagh and those players is unbelievable. So it is significant. It's significant, and I do understand about the January thing and the fact that Dublin still have a lot of players to come back and all those sort of things. But it felt significant because it felt as if we had a plan. Defensively, I thought we looked good. We executed our kickouts better than we have done in a big game in a long, long time. And I thought up front, which we have done probably, to be fair, for some time, up front we're a match for anybody. So I'm genuinely not getting carried away, but I the other night was enjoyable, and I think the perfect game to follow that up is welcoming the All-Ireland champions Tyrone to the Athletic Grounds next week. I don't know what the score is going to be in that game. I'll hazard a guess. 8-7, 9-8, something along those lines. But it'll be tight. They'll have watched what Armagh did. Armagh played with an unbelievable amount of width the other night. Unbelievable. They dragged Dublin everywhere. Something you associate with Dublin in the last number of years. Dublin have been very, very good at that. And Armagh brought that the other night, but you have to bring it to the extreme the next day. Because tighter pitch, more of a definitive defensive system. I think long balls in the rain, him winning them and kicking them over the bar probably won't be possible. So next week's a massive test because you have to readjust, rethink, still work off the same principles defensively as we did, but rethink it attack-wise. And I think that's another test, because that's maybe a test that we haven't been able to pass with flying colours so far, is being able to break down that mass defence without that long kick. So it's obvious that I'm feeling good about things, but next week is a test. But I'm glad that we're following it up with a game like that, because it's one to really get your teeth in again.
By contrast, if you look at Dublin, it wasn't just that Dublin lost, it was the way that they lost. It is only January, and it is a work in progress. But there's a way to lose a game, and I think there will be significant warning signs for Dublin in how they lost that game.
I think for me there was a number of things that shocked me with Dublin. I thought their decision making all over the pitch was not where it needs to be. You can put some of that down to the fact that it's January, it's early season. some of those players don't have a lot of game time. Probably, if I'm honest, the two forwards that looked as if they could do a bit of damage were Costello and Bourne in the corner. They both departed the scene before half time. That definitely didn't help things. Well, I picked out one insert last night, and that was Armagh had a free in the middle of the field, and Armagh were able to kick a low ball into Leen, who was coming out from full forward. There was at least 50 yards of space in front of him. That's basic stuff. Now, that's from a free kick. And when I look back and I thought, well, if it's taken quick enough, but it wasn't. It was the free kick was actually delayed. Owen Murchan was standing in the position where he needed to be and actually went off to the wing to go and mark somebody and left that whole 50 yards right in front of in front of the Armagh full forward line. And that for me was the thing that I picked out, because it's a set play. Dublin have done it for years. Cian O'Sullivan used to do it. Cooper has done it, but also Owen Murchan has done that role.
Yeah,
and they have changed the way they played with the full time sweeper to a different +1 all the time, and yet the other night they couldn't even master that. So there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work to do as far as Dublin are concerned. They still have a lot of the the good traits that you would want again from a serious inter-county team, conditioning wise and physique and all those sort of things. But they're a good bit off where they need to be as far as how organised they are and how disciplined they are. And the last thing I'll say about Dublin was that their reaction to losing the ball and their body language wasn't great. Now, I know that when things are going against you, that can be the case, but just a reaction to losing the ball. John Small lost the ball in the corner one time. He had no reaction to try and win it back. Armagh went the whole way to the top of the field and kicked the ball over the bar. Just little things like that we wouldn't have seen probably in 10 years from Dublin, or more, 15.
I think the thing that struck me as well was towards the end of the game when Dublin were chasing a goal, they were left doing what they did against Mayo last year, and that was lumping the ball into the square, into an absolute forest of players. Gary, I was thinking about this after the game. I think the pressure on the younger Dublin players who are coming in is pretty intense, and it's intense for, I think, two reasons. Number one, they are replacing all-time great players who will live on in for as long as Gaelic football is spoken about. There are players whose names have now departed the scene, who will come into the reckoning for the greatest teams of all time. And number two, the expectation levels in Dublin are now, it's an All-Ireland or bust, and there's no in between. And those players are now trying to learn the inter-county game, but expecting to be a success straight away.
Yeah, and now learning it as well with less of the aura that the previous guys, I suppose, who came into those positions maybe had about them. There's now that unbeatable aura that there was about Dublin seems to have faded that little bit, I suppose, after the events of last year. So definitely it's a huge challenge for them. And I suppose when you're trying to come into a senior inter-county setup like that, I can only go back to my own experience. And I was coming into a team that wasn't winning. I was coming into a team that was, I suppose, struggling really around Division 4, but I could come in, get my place in the team, and I wasn't looking over my shoulder saying, I'm going to be replaced here after 5-10 minutes. That was the reality of it. We were working off a small squad, and I knew that I got myself in the team, and unless I had a real stinker, I was going to be left there and given my chance to develop. Those Dublin players just aren't going to get that time to build themselves into it and to learn the game as they go. So they have to be, as you say, ready to go. But I think a major issue actually for Dublin is that they're probably not used to chasing games. They've been blooding these new guys, and they've been coming into matches where they're on top, they get themselves ahead, and then they can control the game. But as you said there, it's a totally different experience where they're coming in 4 or 5 points down, having to work their way back into a match, try and pick off the points one by one. And teams are almost doing to Dublin now. Armagh almost did it to them what Dublin used to do: get themselves ahead, then control the game, control the spaces of the game, and hit them on the counter. Like it didn't surprise me at all. It's easy said in hindsight to see Armagh do what they did, because from sore experience, we know exactly here in Clare what they're capable of. They beat us in a humdinger of a qualifier in 18, I think it was, and then actually beat us on the last day of the league to go up to Division 1 in 2020. I suppose we'd have been looking at both of those games saying there were potential wins for us, but all of the things that you were looking for in an inter-county team, a modern inter-county team now, Armagh seem to possess. They have pace, they have strength, they're all comfortable on the ball, they're fluid in their positions. Their kickouts have improved. There's still a little bit they can work on there. And as Oisín said, their defensive setup looked a lot better at the weekend. So, I mean, if you were working off the Tyrone model of last year and what are the ingredients you'd be looking for in a modern team, Armagh are ticking an awful lot of those boxes. And I think what Saturday evening showed is probably something that we did know to an extent. They can win that type of game where it's that little bit more open, where both teams want to attack. As Oisín said, now the test is, can they win the type of game where they're not allowed to play that open, expansive football, where Rory Grugan isn't given the space to dictate the game the way that he did early on Saturday evening, and they don't leave that space in front of Leen. I think that was probably a clever move by McGeaney and bringing Rory Grugan to the 40, because if he's not followed, he will dictate the game. If he is followed, it leaves that space. If the centre back follows him, obviously, and that's I suppose where it was surprising for Dublin, as Oisín said, that they didn't leave that sitting six, or they didn't leave someone. They didn't leave their +1 back there. But I suppose to go back to I've wandered a bit there. To go back to your original point, the challenge for those Dublin guys now is greater than it is for any inter-county player who's just starting out. I saw the GPA were doing a rookie camp recently, helping guys settle into inter-county football. There's no rookie camp that's going to prepare those Dubs for trying to get into that team and deal with what's expected of them.
And if you think about it, how long? There are obvious exceptions. There's the Con O'Callaghan who comes almost ready-made, dropped into a squad, and they're good to go. How long does it take before you feel comfortable in an inter-county team?
For me, I would say, and I spoke about my own experience there. I got my debut in 2007. I would say it was definitely 2010 or 2011 before I got comfortable, and that was again, as I say, working off a small squad where there wasn't maybe the same pressure on my position that some of the modern guys be dealing with. So, you're talking 3-4 years, but within, I suppose, more important, it's context dependent. Depends on how many games they're going to get, what sort of pressure is going to be put on you in those games, what the support environment is like that around. I mean, you could look at, you'd have said it might take 3-4 years, and then you've looked at some of the previous Dublin guys who came in, and it looked like in there instantly as well. So I think it really all depends on the environment they're coming into, and the length of time or the amount of games that they get in the time they come in.
If you think of somebody growing up in the Clare, Tony, the Kerry footballers are those young lads who have come into the Kerry team over the last 3 or 4 years. They are under huge pressure to deliver. It rolls on. It's still there, and it's still there after last Sunday.
Yeah. Are you talking specifically about Kerry, Paul?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. I mean, look, I just think on the Dublin thing as well. I mean, not to kind of put a spoke in Oisín's wheels or anything like that, but I do think certainly Dublin. I think let's wait. That's the first thing I would say. They're in Tralee next Saturday night. We may be looking back at last Saturday night in Croke Park in 6 weeks' time, and we might have said, the signs were there. This happened and that happened, or we might be dismissing it completely. It might be the kick up the backside, Dublin need. They may have known already that they're yards off it. I do think genuinely last Saturday night was more about Armagh than it was about Dublin. But in terms of what you're saying about inter-county pressure, I think there are different levels and different expectations in counties. You probably have a tier that probably includes Dublin, Kerry. I'm just trying to think, any of the Ulster ones, Oisín there, where literally you are almost given no time to actually bed yourself in. And certainly Kerry, I would actually say are probably number one in that. Dublin are number two, Paul, in terms of latter expectation. But there's very few counties where you're given no time, and probably they are the two. And I don't know if you want to move on to Newbridge at this stage. Like,
Were you impressed with Kerry?
I mean, Kerry were dreadful. There's no other way of saying it, and there's no point in in trying to dissect it or put it down to one thing or the other, or put it down to missed players, or put it down to Paddy Tally's influence, or which is nonsense really. Like to say like it's all down to a change in style. I mean, Kerry were really poor in the basics, dropping ball, poor movement. Second half was as abysmal a display as I've seen of a Kerry team in quite a while, being honest about it. They were really, really poor. And Jack O'Connor was right about one thing. They were probably lucky to get out of it with a point. The fact that they actually had a lead. And Kildare, I thought, in fairness, were aggressive. I'd agree with much of the analysis I saw and heard last night. I mean, they were, obviously the crowd was up for it, but just in terms of like the lack of movement, the unforced turnovers. Yeah, it was a really bad day at the office, and I'm not certain you put that down to new lads, Paul. If you were asking me, I do think Sean O'Shea is absolutely pivotal. I mean, my views, Paul, on Sean O'Shea. I mean, David Clifford gets all the garlands. I just think like it goes back to me to the old Declan O'Sullivan, Colm Cooper debate when you're talking about Clifford and Sean O'Shea. I mean, David Clifford adorns everything. He's magnificent, but Sean O'Shea is the player who makes that Kerry side tick. And when you're taking him out of the forwards, you're taking such creativity, you're taking ball movement. He's the guy who makes the other players work. And the fact that he's midfield at the moment, because they're obviously short of midfielders, it absolutely removes something. I really thought that Kerry attack yesterday had callow is the wrong word, but it just lacked presence. I just thought, I mean, David Clifford had, by his standards, like a pretty average afternoon. So all in all, it was a bad day at the office for Kerry yesterday. And I know you might think, well, a point away in Newbridge on a bad day at the office isn't a bad first day. But I think that's what actually makes next Saturday night in Tralee so intriguing, because you've two sides coming off, I would say, very questionable performances. And the loser next Saturday night, Paul, to go back to your pressure issue, if Dublin are coming away from Tralee and they've lost again, then you have serious questions. If Kerry are beaten at home by Dublin next Saturday night, then you have serious questions.
Would you play Shawnee O'Shea at 11?
Absolutely, all day long and twice on Sunday. Yeah.
And where would Paddy Clifford go?
Paddy Clifford, usually what he does, let's face it, numbers and positions at this stage are somewhat, irrelevant. But what it tends to happen basically is Paddy Clifford starts as a 15 nominally, and basically drifts out to the half forward line, and you still probably have Gainey and David Clifford playing together inside. But it isn't even that, like last year, for instance. I mean, Peter Keane tried something different with Sean O'Shea, which worked very well, which basically, instead of actually Sean O'Shea coming short, Sean O'Shea was actually going long. His first position was actually, run was into the full forward line, and then he was actually coming back out from the full forward line. Obviously, with his fitness, A, and B, the fact that he's so difficult to mark, it gave him that latitude to move around the place. But I mean, he was still very much part of the attack. In fact, he was the fulcrum of the attack. And Stephen O'Brien has to come back yet, but you look at Micheál Burns yesterday at 10 and Dara Moynihan at 12. Two really good players, two really hard workers, two really decent players. Sean O'Shea, Paul, is the guy that makes them tick. They were a little bit bereft, I thought, yesterday in Newbridge, because they were the ones making it all work. They weren't the ones coming off Sean O'Shea's work. And so I do think, without labouring the point, yes, Sean O'Shea is an absolute 11 for Kerry. The absolute 11.
Gary, I look at Kerry and everybody talks about the defence. For me, it's the midfield and getting the balance right in midfield. If you were selecting the Kerry team, who would you play midfield?
That's a real easy one for a Monday morning, isn't it? Kerry lads would love to hear me picking who they'd put midfield. Mother of God, it's a challenge for them, because I think probably the guy they were lining up to be the anchor at midfield is down in Australia now, in Mark O'Connor. You know, and we're probably looking at him being the long-term, I suppose, anchor there. So Adrian Spillane went there yesterday. Has played there a good bit. I suppose what I see with Adrian is he's a really hard worker. Will bring others into the game, but I'm not sure he'll dictate the game and control the game around the middle the way that Kerry are used to having Darragh O'Shea do down the years, and even David Moran to an extent. So I'm not sure. Diarmuid O'Connor, Tony, you'd know more what his situation is. I know he's still involved with club action, isn't he, at the moment? Diarmuid
Well,
O'Connor.
they were beating Gar the weekend, so he's back next weekend with Jack Barry.
I think the two of them actually were two of the top three names I had, and David Moran, obviously. I played with David back in college, and have come across him plenty since. And until such time as I think they have someone in there who can control the game and dictate the game, I think David was worth having there, because he will bring others into it, and his delivery when he's on his game is second to none. So I think he's worth keeping, and I'd put either Diarmuid O'Connor or Jack Barry with him until such time as they have someone there who can control the game the way that Kerry teams are used to having someone in the middle of the field controlling it, I suppose.
You know, sorry, Paul, I was just going to say next Saturday night's actually selection will tell a lot in that regard, because they don't have David Moran, and he's obviously just back training. He hasn't played since the county final. But I think the way Jack and the management are thinking, we will get a flavour of it the next night, because I like Adrian Spillane, and the reason I know Kerry will go with him is because, and I think Eamon Fitzmaurice made this point, I think in the Examiner this morning, I definitely read it somewhere last night, is that traditionally Kerry always like having that sort of a 9 back through the years, you know, whether it was Ambrose O'Donovan, whether it was William Kirby, whether it was Seamus Scanlon, that guy who almost is that kind of blue collar toiler, might almost play as a kind of a second 6, and you let your Darragh O'Sheas and you let these guys, you know, gallivant up the pitch. And Adrian Spillane has a massive engine on him. Like, he's a big unit, will do all that kind of work, and would be a perfect foil to a David Moran if David Moran was fit. But the fact that Jack O'Connor has the two Gale boys back, it'll be interesting to see how he combos them. Like, I'm not sure, you know, how many people are aware, but Kerry suffered a big blow the weekend, because Stephen O'Connor dislocated his shoulder playing for Gale in that All-Ireland club. Now, I know Jack has huge time for him, and I wouldn't have been surprised to have seen him definitely getting game time against Dublin the next night. So that's one option gone. David Moran obviously still is quite a way away. So you're probably looking at, you know, one of the Gale guys and Adrian Spillane maybe the next night with Sean O'Shea. It's not ideal at the moment, but there are issues there. And Oisín, you're nodding. What are you thinking?
No, I just think that if they're going to play Moran, they definitely need legs, somebody with legs. But this may be a good opportunity to have Adrian Spillane and Diarmuid O'Connor. I mean, that doesn't sound like the worst combo in the world, and give them a go. Midfield combinations, I wouldn't be the best. Gary would be way ahead of me on this one, but midfield combinations do take a little bit of time to bed in. I do understand that this is pretty unforgiving circumstances when you put them in against Division 1 teams, but that's where they're going to be, you know, learn the trade, and I think, you know, I've seen enough of Spillane to suggest that he could play there. it's just what combinations played there. And to be honest, long term, I don't know if David Moran is going to be a 60-minute man. I think he's somebody who's going to come in and maybe finish the game off. So I'd like to see O'Connor maybe in Spillane in the middle of the field and see what that does for them. Because I do think the more that Kerry travel on the journey that they're on, and that journey of change, that it's going to take legs in the middle of the field, and those two boys probably fit the bill as well as anybody else.
And Jack Barry has made his reputation on marking Brian Fenton in games and doing a really good job doing it. So, you know, Jack may decide to go horses for courses in that regard and stick Jack Barry in. But you know what? I think Gary's point is a great one in that everybody in Kerry, every year, you know, you talk about the cuckoo. The first question you ever always hear in Kerry is any sign of Mark O'Connor coming home. And that's probably an indicator of where David Moran is at in his career, in his career, and in terms of the alternatives, because Mark O'Connor is your literally wrapped up, ready-made guy to slot in there.
Paul, can you just go back on something Gary said about aura and talking about Dublin, because it definitely has watched United since Ferguson left, that there was a time when you knew that aura had gone. Now, I knew anybody again who followed United would knew when it was slipping. So maybe that Dublin aura is slipping, but also there's a key thing here that Dublin, Kerry. Okay, so Dublin are gone. Who's taking over? Kerry. And I said to you last week about I don't think Kerry will win any All-Ireland anytime soon. But the thing I think is that a lot of teams yesterday will sit up and take notice. So Dublin, pretty abject. Kerry, the same. What does that do for the other teams? And that, especially
it's wide open.
One?
This year feels at this stage. I know it's the end of January. We're coming into the second league game going to be played on the 5th and 6th of February. So it's really, really early, but it feels wide open.
And for me, that's all it has to do. All it has to do is feel that way for a lot of teams, to give them a little bit more oxygen, a little bit more energy, a little bit more of a reason to dig in and keep going. For the fringe players to say to themselves, whoa, I'm not, like, you just have to look at Tyrone, you go, like, I'm not missing out, I'm powering on. And if you're one of those Division 1 teams at this stage, certainly today, that may change over the next couple of weeks, but certainly today, you're waking up and you're going, you know, the All-Ireland that seemed, you know, a million miles away 3 years ago now feels a lot more tangible. And that's all it has to do.
So that's fine, but let's look at this from a different angle. If you were in charge of Dublin or you're in charge of Kerry, and you see the way there's been a reaction to how you played at the weekend, you know yourself where it didn't go right. You've got a video here that you can go to the players and say, look, this is the problem. This is what we have to fix. It's a really nice thing early in the league to get something like that if you're a serious contender. And someone just hands you something and say, this is something to be used. This is a learning tool. It's a teaching tool to be used with players. And you know what you now know what you need to fix.
Yeah, but this is just a small point on it, Paul. It's too late. It's too late in regard to you've given other teams oxygen. You've given other teams hope. I understand exactly what you're saying. I mean, you know, if you're looking at a stick to beat both of those teams with, I mean, you've got it. You know, and you've got it for some time. There's lots of passages of play there that will go out in the WhatsApp groups this week and all those sort of things. But as far as giving other teams hope, it's too late now. You've given them that little bit of hope. Things are going to change. The pitches are going to change. The sod's going to change. And, you know, you'd like to think that both of those teams will improve dramatically on what we've seen at the weekend. But as far as I'm just talking about the other teams, as far as what the other teams have seen, they've seen enough now. They've seen enough in order to, as I say, to get that little bit more oxygen and to get that little bit of hope that they needed. Dublin and Kerry will be fine, I'm pretty sure, but it just leaves it, to be honest, even at an early stage in the season, it leaves it very, very exciting for the rest of the year. I am in no way writing off Dublin or Kerry and their capacity to learn from it, to change, to develop.
Hold on. You said Kerry weren't going to win in All Ireland anytime soon. You can't have it everywhere.
He's lost it.
Yeah, well, I suppose the thing that I would say about Kerry is that everybody said, right, Dublin's gone, they're in transition, they're not going to be winning the All Ireland. So what do? We throw Kerry in there. They'll take over now. They'll do. What about everybody? Everybody else is trained in the same way, conditioned in the same way in that division. There's no such thing as like Dublin all of a sudden handing the baton to Kerry and Kerry going about their business and winning a couple of All Irelands in a row while the rest was fucking sit back and have a look on and appreciate how good they are and how great a football they play. People are looking to demolish that Kerry forward line to do even more of what Kildare did yesterday, to demoralise them, to not give them any sort of space to operate in, and to be better going the other way. Hey, Tyrone gave us the blueprint for that last year, and I do think that this thing of Dublin's gone, so fucking Kerry's going to take over and they're going to win the next number of All Ireland. Modern day football ain't going to work like that, and if Kerry are going to win something, they're going to have to properly work for it, and that's where the question mark is, Paul.
Tony's smiling, but there's no happiness in that smile.
No,
that's where the question mark is, Tony. That's where the question mark is when it's really put up to them. I know we're not going to find that out for a while, but when it's really put up to them, that's when we're going to find things out.
Listen, I two things I would say certainly. I think you're reading too much into Saturday night. That's the
I'm
first
not even
thing.
talking about Saturday night. I was talking
And
about this last week, Tony.
The second thing is I 100% agree with you. I've actually been writing this for quite a long time, Oisín, and genuinely, in general terms, say what you need to say about where Kerry are at, but their inability to close out games has been haunting Kerry for I don't know how long. I could go right back. I genuinely have a theory. People absolutely laugh at it all the time. So why should this morning be any different? I'm more than happy to put it out there and be ridiculed. I absolutely still believe that Kerry have never got over the scars of 1982 and Offaly. I think that is buried very, very deeply in Kerry's football psyche. And it is no coincidence that time after time after time, they fail to close out games, whether they're league games, championship games, All-Ireland semi-finals or finals. Kerry have consistently failed to close out big games. I definitely think that there is some scar tissue there that they don't seem to be able to, like the best sides do. Like they shut down, they do what they have to do, like your Tyrones. I really do think that there is an ongoing issue there in Kerry that nobody is addressing. I see Fitzmaurice, in fairness to him, has alluded to it kind of, bits and pieces. It's almost as if people in Kerry are afraid to talk about it. But I definitely think that, can you remember, lads, the last time, probably Mayo in 2014 in the replay in Limerick is the only one I can think of in the last decade where Kerry actually came back and rescued a big game.
Yeah, it's very hard to think about. I will say about 82, by the way, that Offaly haven't got over 82 as well. They bloody can't stop talking about it. I've won one Leinster championship since then. One Leinster championship. Anyway, Gary.
Paul,
Gary.
About Offaly.
Yeah, oh, I know. Gary, can Clare beat Kerry?
Yes, they can. The first thing I'd say, yes. Obviously, I'll have to qualify it a little bit as I go along, but since I'm 5 or 6 years old or younger, as long as I can remember, I believe that we can beat them. That's probably exactly what Kerry want to hear, and that it awakens them to that, I suppose, to a certain extent. We've had a couple of very good chances, or we had a couple of very good chances around 14 and 17. We had them at home. Kerry went down to 14 men just before half time. Bad day, and James O'Donoghue in the second half just took over the game and started scoring from every direction. So we've had those couple of chances, but if you're talking about 82 being in the psyche of Kerry teams, you have 50 years of that, of repeated beatings for Clare teams, that, you know, that has to be challenged in the psyche and has to be, I suppose there's a certain mental element that has to be tackled there before that can happen, and that doesn't happen overnight. It happens, I suppose, by building up experience over time, competing, getting to a level where we're consistently competing with the best teams, and then trusting that in time, when the time is right, it will happen. So that's, I suppose.
Would you, Gary? Would you rather work on? Would you rather beat Kerry and win another Munster final, or would you rather get up to Division 1 and be a regular Division 1 team?
I don't think they're independent of one another. I think getting up to Division 1 and being a regular Division 1 team makes beating Kerry and winning a Munster final more likely. And I would hope that it wouldn't, if one were to happen, it wouldn't make it independent of the other. I would like to think that they would happen, I suppose, in line with one another. So the main thing for us in Clare is to keep trying to compete at the highest level possible that we can. And you see, it seems alien to people outside of Clare football, because Clare is just seen as a hurling county and the footballers are tipping away, and geez, aren't they doing great to still be in Division 2? Like, you know, Oisín, you actually hit the nail on the head last night. That's not the way Colm Collins thinks at all. Colm is 100% thinking of getting Clare to Division 1, getting us to the highest level possible and staying there for as long as we possibly can. And, you know, it may seem deluded to some people on the outside, but, you know, I suppose people don't realise maybe the number of players we have in Clare potentially. And, you know, even when I was playing, the comment to be thrown out, oh geez, sure, they have Gary Brennan there and they have David Tuberty, you know. But I mean, I was actually at the game yesterday doing the Clare game, the most ridiculous role of all time. Colm rang me Friday night to ask would I do Mayor Ishka under these new conditions. They were stuck for Mayor Ishka. So yeah, well, I'll come back to that, but I suppose what I was saying was Clare are not looking at trying to stay in Division 2. Clare are trying to get to the very highest level possible. And when I looked at our bench yesterday, I could see 3 or 4 guys, and I was like, geez, he's not playing today. You know, I was kind of saying those guys are well ready. In my time when I was starting off, if anyone showed potential, they were in straight away. You know, whereas now we have a couple of guys that you can bring in. And this is not me saying that Clare are definitely going to be in contention for promotion from Division 2. It's not, you know, it's going to be a challenge every year, and every game is going to be a challenge. But that's the thinking, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
I think the 3 best teams in Division 2 are Clare, Galway and Derry, with Roscommon in around it as well. And yesterday, I had just talking to Offaly people saying, oh, we have to go down, we have to beat Clare if we're to survive in Division 2. I just total misreading of how football has changed in the last 10 years. Total misreading of it. And the games that Offaly have to win are the games that come towards the latter end of the league, not necessarily last Sunday. The water breaks are gone. You were wearing the Mayor Ishka bib yesterday. You're on and off the field. Could you bring instructions onto your players?
No, I think that's what Colm rang me on Friday night, and he asked, they were stuck. Obviously, these rules landed on them last week and said that you can't have a member of management or any member of the squad. We'd always, when I was playing, we'd have had a non-playing member of the squad would do Mayor Ishka. So I was sent over yesterday with the intention, I think, of maybe issuing some instruction from whatever I would see. But I had to stand. The rule is that you have to stand pretty much in the one spot on the sideline. You are not allowed onto the pitch. So we're gone from everyone drinking out of their own water bottle after 15 minutes or 17 minutes to you flinging a water bottle from the sideline and it landing on the ground, a fella picking it up and drinking out of it, and then flinging it back at you. It's just we seem to be
So
gone
you're
from
not
one
allowed
extreme
on
to
the
other,
field.
so.
You weren't allowed on
Not
the
allowed
field.
on the pitch. Not allowed
Number
on the pitch.
one.
No, not
Number
supposed to have
two.
any.
You're not allowed being wired up.
Not supposed to have any.
I'm sure you were
communication,
wired up, but you weren't allowed
No,
to.
I genuinely wasn't. Now, what I did notice from the Offaly side was that there was a man behind me in the stand speaking to the Offaly guy on the sideline, but I'm sure every county is doing that.
I don't think
that
so,
could
Gary.
be his friend from home having a chat with him. That was his friend from home having a chat with him, giving him a bit of advice. But no, I'm sure Clare had the same setup if it was needed. But, it seems to be gone to a total extreme now where you can't come on the field. My first experiences of county football were doing Mayor Ishka and club football. I spent my youth running around with the water bottle in my hand, and I probably covered my 10k going around the field every time there'd be a break and play or beyond. But it's gone mad. When I was playing, there's no way I'd have had a chance in the middle of a game to run over to the sideline, get a drink of water, and run back out in position. You don't get that time to do it. So I don't know. I can't understand. I can see why they wanted to get guys off the pitch, but to me, there's a very simple solution to that. If there was a Mayor Ishka on the pitch who was interfering with play, you give a penalty against the team, and he gets a hefty ban. And the teams won't be long getting them off the pitch then when they're in the way. And anyway, it's maybe I'm getting very worked up over
no, but it just seems to be so nitpicking that you can't put a runner onto the field. I just can't see the problem. Oisín, what's your view on this?
There's a couple of people at fault for this. One of them is Tony Leen's old mucker, Tony McEntee. I think he was in an altercation one time. I think Tommy Griffin might have contributed as well. He might have been. There's been a few incidents, and Croke Park they just seem to hate that sort of thing. But we've gone from Murfernia to water breaks, and now back to nothing. The Mirishka one is a real difficult one to understand. In that why somebody who's not involved in the team in the match day setup. I don't know how that somebody.
How do you police that even? Who knows who's involved?
But why? So tell me why. Please tell me why that you wouldn't want a member of the panel or somebody who's there that could contribute. Why you wouldn't want that person there?
I agree.
Make any sense to me. And as far as the Murfernia, I mean, let's give proper guidelines to these guys, and as Gary says, let them know what the penalties are. So that you don't have the Murfernia for the next 2 games or 3 games or whatever it is. But Jesus, because of 1 or 2 incidents, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I know there was guys who were taking the mick a little bit in that they were closing down the space for the opposition kickouts and different things like that. That's not on. I do agree with that. But Jesus, very difficult to get any sort of message on now the way things are, and even just like Gary's absolutely highlighted that for me, the nonsense that Marishka thing is.
I want to turn quickly to next weekend. There are unbelievable matches next weekend. You just could not but be excited for it. It's okay. Kerry and Dublin on Saturday night in Tralee. No need to say anything more about that. Armagh against Tyrone. We're going to see what Armagh are made of next weekend when the All-Ireland champions come to town and this rejuvenated Armagh meets a reality check. It's going to be absolute. I cannot wait for next Monday's podcast already. Monaghan and Mayo, always a brilliant battle in Division 1. And Donegal Kildare. Donegal Kildare up in Ballybuffet. Again, it could be one of the great running games of all time up and down the field. But in Division 2, there are 2 games next weekend, which are really, really, really interesting. Cork v Clare in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Clare have to be favourites going down to that game. Have to be. No argument on that. Going down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and if Clare beat Cork next weekend, Cork are under immense pressure. The following day, in Park Charlton in Navan, Meath, who didn't score for 45 minutes yesterday, play against Roscommon. And Roscommon have to be favourites to win that game. You could have Meath and Cork already under the pump 2 weeks into these games. So my question is simple. If you start the league, or if you have a really bad day within the league, how do you recover within a week or 6 days, as the case may be for these teams? How do you, if you're Andy McEntee with Meath, if you're Keith Ricken with Cork, how do you turn the corner in a week? What can you realistically do in a week?
The lads are better qualified. The lads are better qualified to answer in terms of recovery and tactics. But I do know, depending where you are in your journey, I mean, you know, the Andy McEntee situation, Paul, in Meath is very interesting, because obviously I think Andy was under pressure before the season even started. And, you know, not scoring for 45 minutes yesterday, I genuinely, you know, you could almost feel it on social media. People were kind of saying, like, you know, see, we told you so. I mean, Cork, I actually think, and I was talking to somebody from Cork, it's funny, last night, and to tell you where Cork football is at right now, they are really, really scared about playing Clare next weekend.
And there should be.
And not just, well, it isn't just because it's Clare. Like, the Cork project hasn't got off the ground yet. No, everybody's settled down. Same thing as we said at the very outset about Dublin and Armagh. It's one game. But the fact that they've hemorrhaged so many squad members already, and they hemorrhaged 2 more last night after the game when it emerged Kevin Crowley and Luke Connolly were gone. You know, you can make your own judgments, lads, in terms of whether the lads have walked, whether Keith Ricken has said, thanks, look, but go back to your clubs and see where you're at for a while. You know, good night and good luck. You can read into those any way you want.
Which way do you see it? Which way do you see it?
Well, I think every case, I genuinely think, Paul, every case is different. I think Luke Connolly is struggling for fitness. I think Kevin Crowley is struggling for fitness. Does it mean that they'll come back when they are fit? Not necessarily. I genuinely think Keith Ricken and his lads have really decided at this stage, you know what, we need to start over here. All Cork need to get out of this league, the only fundamental they need is to stay in Division 2. They have to survive in Division 2. Cork football cannot afford to go back to Division 3. You've seen over the last couple of weeks, basically, there are players who are no longer interested in playing inter-county football with Cork. That's a stark statement, but it looks, from what I'm looking at from outside, it's the reality. Keith Ricken has no choice but to go with these young lads, to go with the Mark Cronins, to go with the guys. And being at home to Clare next Sunday is a tough ask. It's a big opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised, and Gary would be delighted to hear me saying so, I wouldn't be surprised to see Cork rebound and beat Clare next weekend. But I got to say, it's more likely.
Gary, you see that happening?
What do you think, Gary? Yeah,
well, if Division 2 taught me anything, it's that thinking the team will win 2 games in a row is folly. Because it hardly ever happens in Division 2 for whatever reason it is. And like, yes, we have had a better record against Cork in the last few years than we had for however many hundred before that. But you know, our challenge has always been, and so that's what we were talking about earlier with Armagh making the step up. Our challenge has been consistency. So we put in a good display yesterday for about 55 minutes. I would say Clare played poorly for the first 15 and then pretty good after that. So if Clare don't play well for the first 15 next Saturday evening, it could be a case that it's gone too far from them, you know, and consistency week to week has been a challenge. So that's what Clare have to start showing to ensure that we do get to the upper end of Division 2. Cork obviously at home will be hurting. I have seen up close some of Keith Ricken's teams. I was working for a few of the games with PG Carr when at 20s level, when they took down Jack O'Connor's 20s, and saw them a good few times after that. And there's just something about I've said it to a couple of Cork colleagues working with me, and I've said it to them from the minute Keith Ricken was appointed. There was something about the way those teams carried themselves that, and he seems to have good guys around him. Now, it obviously is a step up to see that happening at senior level, but I would think, I suppose the best way I can say it is that I told my Cork colleague that I was concerned about Cork now because Keith Ricken was in charge, so.
But it'll take time, isn't that right? Like it's a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, potentially. I suppose I'd have thought maybe it might not take a couple of years in Cork. They might be able to go back to the original question. Any team to win 2 games in a row or 2 weeks in a row in Division 2, it's rare you see it unless they are the one team, maybe the outlier who shoots off to the top. So I won't be making any bold predictions on Clare going down and beating Cork just yet.
I think Paul, sorry, just briefly to finish on that. I think Ricken and the lads have decided, like usually, and Oisín will know this again, and Gary will know it better than I because they've obviously been in management. There's almost like a 3 kind of a phase thing, Oisín, isn't there? Like number 1, you look to see what you have. Second year, you start moving the fresh guys in and the older guys out. And third year, you hope to achieve. I think Keith and the lads have actually moved straight to the year 2. I think they already knew that they'd surveyed what was available. Keith Ricken has been around Cork. He's been involved in college. He's been involved in underage. He knows what's there. He knows what's coming through. He obviously has a bit of confidence in what's coming through. And if guys have been prepared to walk, he's not holding the door open. He's letting them out and saying, right, okay. And that probably means, Paul, as you say, that means that it may take a little bit longer than Cork people are expecting, which is why I think it is, again, to repeat, so important that they stay in Division 2 this year.
Oisín.
I can't believe how much you've trolled Cork already, and we're only on the second podcast of the year, knowing that Offaly have still to play them down the lane. Cork, the Keith Ricken thing, I come up against him. He had a very good CIT team. We come up against him a number of years ago. He seems to have put a lot of faith in a lot of those guys. All of those guys, I suppose on the face of it, are new, but they're not really young. They're 22 and 23 years of age. I think the thing that they haven't had maybe is a consistency as far as what way they're conditioned. And again, I don't want to keep talking every week about conditioning, but there's a 2 or 3 year spell there where players need to get up to speed. It's very unforgiving for a young lad to come in and be thrown into county football at this level, but it's even more unforgiving whenever there's a bunch of them all at one time and there's very little experience around them. So Cork football will have to suck it up, for a while. And Tony is 100% right. While they are doing that, while they're sucking it up, the most important thing is that they cling on in some way to Division 2 status, because if they go to 3, you're not only going to have maybe Keith Ricken saying to the lads, walk if you want, but what you're going to have then is you're going to have the defections, and then you need to be building a consistency. One of the stats from last night was that down in the last 5 years we've used 85 players, 85 different players. There's too much of a turnover of players in order to gain momentum or to build anything. And Cork don't want to find themselves in that same situation. So he needs to, what he has now, he needs to hold it. He needs to be working with 36, 37 players. He needs to hold them and blood them, I suppose. Like, again, 7 games in 9 weeks. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. A lot of these lads involved in college football. Like, you're asking me what Andy McEntee's going to do this week. Well, the first thing he's going to have to do, he's going to have to strategically pick the nights that he's training, because otherwise he'll probably be without 5 or 6 lads who are playing college football, and get them in and get them together. So he possibly won't know what he has for next weekend until maybe Thursday. You know, that everybody has come through the games, and that's what makes this time of year and the situation that we're in. You know, it must be hugely frustrating for the county managers to, you know, to not be able to have those players that they want. I mean, our college team is going to Galway today for matches at 2:30 in Tuam. I mean, a lot of those guys have played yesterday. They've had to.
Are you staying the night?
No, my wife told me to straight back up the road, so straight back up the road it is. But I'm just thinking, like, you know, a lot of those guys, not only did they play the match yesterday, but have to travel home. Very little time for recovery. Up, you know, on the bus this morning at, you know, 9 or 10 o'clock. So, like, it is a tough station. We're getting back to the Cork thing. I mean, the crucial thing for them is to stay in Division 2 by whatever means they can. Next week is huge. Next weekend is huge. It's huge for a lot of teams. I think in particular Cork, because if they lose that game, they have a few games coming up that I don't see. I don't see as winnable.
Yeah, we'll be talking in the coming weeks about a whole variety of different teams in different divisions, and you can see in Division 3 already, Laois and Westmeath, like pre-season favourites to be promoted, got a good start to things. Antrim are there in the background. Limerick are building slowly. There are footballers in Limerick who are slowly coming together. Limerick are not going to be too bad. But before we finish, we have to talk about Division 4, and there are two things in Division 4 that I think are really worth looking at. First of all, London, after 2 years away, come back in and play the first game in the league and beat Carlow, which is an outstanding start for London in that. But most of all, Tipperary, Munster champions the year before last, tipped to come straight back up, and they went down to Waterford and played Waterford. And Waterford came out with a 10 points all draw, full value for that. Gary, going down to Waterford, do you feel some sort of you're shaking your head as if you're greasy fears, and I know from people who've gone down there, it is not simple. There are a lot of footballers in Waterford, but do you feel some sort of, I suppose, allegiance with Waterford footballers in a kind of in a strange way, in the sense that within a county where hurling is privileged, certainly in Waterford it's hugely privileged, but there are serious footballers in Waterford?
Absolutely. It gave me a shiver there thinking of going down that road to Dungarvan. Honest to God, it was whether it was the road or the reception, I don't know which, but we had a worse record down there than anywhere else, and they're an extremely proud footballing group down there. Like, you know, the couple of the guys I would have played with in the Munster teams, the O'Gormans, and, you know, they just keep the show going despite all the obstacles. And some of the stories I'd have heard from them as regards the way they were resourced, maybe, and some of the Waterford footballers, the way that the support they got, I suppose, even in comparison to when we weren't where we are now in Clare, and we might have thought we weren't being well supported. You know, I think some of their players would feel that it's even poorer than that, or they're even poorer off. So, you know, it's not an easy situation when you're in a county like that, where you're playing second fiddle and not getting maybe the backing that you deserve. But fair play to them. I can't ever remember. I think once we had a good win down there where we beat them 9 or 10 points, and other than that, if you come out there with a 1 point win, I'd take it any night of the week.
I must admit, when I saw Aoife Fitzgerald going down there, Paul, it was interesting because the managers have actually swapped between the Waterford men's senior football team and the Cork ladies team. Shane Ronayne has gone to the Cork ladies team. Aoife Fitzgerald has gone down there. Aoife Fitzgerald is around the block a long time and is a pretty good judge of football, and has trained Nemo to win, I think it's 4 county championships, and obviously was above in Clare with Gary and the lads for a while as well. So, I was delighted to see that. It was a good result. I'm not sure which it says more about, but I know it was a good result. One last thing I wanted to ask, and we're going right back to the start. We should nearly have this thing, Paul, every week where we all get to ask each other one question at the end. But I want to ask Oisín genuinely, I mean, and this is for insight reasons more than anything. Rian O'Neill is your nephew, Oisín, and we've been hearing about Rian. I certainly have been hearing about him for the last 3-4 years. How close is he now to the consistency required to be a top inter-county footballer?
I think he's, I think probably in the last 6 months, I think he's there. I think regardless of what's thrown at him, it reminds me a little bit of the Michael Murphy situation in that, like, he spends a little bit of time inside, and the weekend was the most I've seen him play, obviously in the full forward line. But I think they probably won't have the luxury to do that. They probably need to bring him a little bit further out the field, especially next week in the league game. But I think his consistency is phenomenal. I think what I like about him, and not to eulogize about your nephew too much, but the thing I like about him is that even when things aren't rolling for him or going his way, he has an effect on the game because he works so hard. He'll just go and he'll hunt somebody down and he'll turn the ball over. And I suppose that's the biggest compliment that I can give him. And that was a real indication that he's matured and he's gone to the next level, is that, you know, the head doesn't go up anymore whenever, you know, things maybe aren't going his way. I think he genuinely expects things not to go his way. He expects to be double marked, or he expects to be, you know, in for a bit of treatment or whatever it is. And I think that whereas, and obviously he gets this from the other side of the house, but he would have lashed out maybe in previous times, and I think he got his marching orders a couple of times. I think he's learned from that, and I think he's matured. So I think even if things aren't going his way, you know, he's walking, he's turning the ball over, he's doing something simple in the middle of the field, and I think as a result of that, he's very close to being to where he needs to be as far as being top level inter-county footballer.
Well, it'll be good to watch him next weekend and watch Armagh continue their progress to the Champions League, inevitable as it seems to now be painted. Thank you to Larry Ryan for running this podcast, to Raf Rocca, to Tony for joining us today, to everyone at Examiner Sport for making it happen. A huge thanks to Oisín, and especially to Gary Brennan for joining us today. We'll be back soon.
It's only the Allianz Leagues. It's only February. Only a warm-up. Only a relegation. Only a bit of fun. It's only a debut. Only hundreds of competitive matches and thousands of players giving it their all. Only an unstoppable passion for GA across the whole nation. It's only 30 years of Allianz supporting the leagues, and we're not done yet. Only the leagues. Only the Allianz Leagues.
A grain of rice is going to tip the scale. Just remember that, lads. There's a small bit of a needle there. Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen back to England, and now they're really roaring. And I can tell you, there won't be a cow milk.